Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
These Jagannath deities were carved by Lord Chaitanya's own hand. When he stayed in Srirangam at the house of Venkatavata, which is almost directly across the street from where we're seated right now, as Murali Bhatta, the 20th in line of descent from Venkatavata, described, Lord Chaitanya wasn't idle all day long. He was actively engaged in varieties of service, one of which was, with his own hand, he carved these Jagannath, Baladev and Subhadra deities. They look a little different than Jagannath, Baladev and Subhadra in Puri. It gives us some idea of how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu envisioned Krishna and Balaram and Subhadra when he had darshan of Lord Jagannath. Something of an idea. There's the Garuda Stamba. Mahaprabhu standing by the side of Garuda Stamba. Pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, following that very special appreciation of Lord Chaitanya's influence here. But the influence of Ranganath in the whole of the Sri Sampradaya is especially outstanding. Of all of the 108 principal deities recognized by the Alvars, and in turn by the followers in Sri Sampradaya, this Ranganath deity is the principal one. And there's a very wonderful history of the manifesting of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in His deity form in the very early stages of creation. So the details of that narration are very, very wonderful. We know that in the very same as found in Srimad Bhagavatam. Can you make way for this Pujari to come through? I can distribute later, yeah? Thank you. This is Murali Bhatt. Harima! Who is exemplifying the teachings of Ramanujacarya in such a wonderful way, simply desiring to serve the devotees of the Lord. And here's another Murali, simply desiring to serve the devotees of the Lord. And here's the prasad of Lord Jagannath. We'll honor in just a while. Put this safely so the ants don't take it first. Do it some safe way. Please be careful. Cloth. Or water. Can we have some water? That's good, that's good. Okay. We have a lot of prasadam to distribute. Chandan, tulsi leaves, Jagannath prasad, Ranganath prasad, this prasad, that prasad. We've been getting a lot of mercy here. one of the Purusha avatars, Garbhodakshai Vishnu, reclined on the Garbhodak ocean, and simply by his will, a divine lotus stem manifested from his navel. And as that stem grew, on top of the stem appeared 1,000-petaled golden lotus. And on top of that golden lotus was Lord Brahma. Atmabhu, Lord Brahma, making his appearance at the very beginning, before there was even creation. After his inquiry into his identity, he heard the syllables tapa 3 times and engaged in his austerities for 1,000 celestial years. After which he had darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, who instructed him in transcendental knowledge and gave him his service of being the creator of the universe. That's the Bhagavatam description. This other description is following his tapasya, Hamsa avatar, in the form of a swan, imparted knowledge unto Lord Brahma. Through Hamsa, the Vedas were manifested within the heart of Brahma, and he began the creation. In very early stage of the creation, from 2 of the ears of Lord Brahma, Madhu and Kaitaba manifested, which was great misfortune because they're demons, and everything comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Without the sanction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there isn't anything that can take place. Madhu and Kaitaba manifested. And Madhu and Kaitaba were very interested in stealing the Vedas, because all the Vedas produce kriti, or piety, or merit. And duskritis like to have merit so they can apply it for their nefarious purposes. So they stole the Vedas from Brahma. And in that condition, Brahma was forgetful. Not knowing what to do, he prayed to Lord Vishnu. He received this indication from Lord Vishnu that he should go to the shore of the Milk Ocean. And there he continued to offer his prayers, where the personality of Godhead then appeared and spoke to him and indicated to Lord Brahma, "Don't worry, I will destroy these 2 demons, Madhu and Kaitaba." And so in his transcendental form, he personally came and destroyed Madhu and Kaitaba. Therefore we have this name, Madhu Sudana, a name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead who destroyed those who stole the Vedas and were interested in using it in mischievous ways. After that, Hayagriva, a form of the Lord, part of his body being appearing to be like that of a horse, through his mouth he again delivered the Vedas to Lord Brahma. If you remember, when we were on top of Tirumala, there was the Bhuvaraha temple and the Varaha Pushkarini. Very nearby, up on that raised set of platform, there was a Hayagriva temple. This is in honor of that form of the Lord who imparted knowledge again to Lord Brahma. And Brahma continued with his service. Brahma desired very much, very, very much, to see a form of the Lord in which he could directly offer worship. Again, he was advised, go to the shore of the milk ocean, your desire will be fulfilled. Offer your prayers there. So he went, and from out of the milk ocean came a golden vimana. Vimana is a craft or a carrier of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that deity was the deity that we saw. The fulfillment of Lord Brahma's desire to see the actual form of the Lord, who was his father, Mahavishnu, or the expansion of Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu. So that form that we saw is the deity that Lord Brahma prayed for and directly received and was worshipped on Satyaloka for long, long time. Lord Brahma engaged as his chief pujari Suryadev himself, Vivasvatam, or Vivaswan, and then in turn Vivaswan's son Vivasvatamanu, and then in his turn Ikshvaku. But we know that it was part of Ikshvaku's service unto that lineage of the Surya dynasty that he brought knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead from that realm to this realm, to the earthly realm. And following Ikshvaku, the line of kings in which Ramachandra appeared, the Surya dynasty. When Ikshvaku was ruling, he was considering that my predecessors and those who are residing in the heavenly region, they can very easily, much more easily, worship Lord Ranganath by taking his darshan there. But those who, in my descendants of line here on earth, will not be able to go there and take darshan and worship Lord Ranganath and become purified and perfected in their lives. So he desired very strongly that Ranganath come from the abode of Lord Brahma, Brahmaloka, to this earthly realm. And he began engaging in very intense austerities. I mean, it's not like fasting on Ekadasi, or maybe chanting 64 rounds on Janmashtami, or cleaning the pots after the Sunday feast, or some kind of austerity that someone might think, oh, this is... Or I really look forward to fasting on Ekadasi and washing the pots after, but on Sunday, not like... His austerities were Satya Yuga austerities. They were very intense. In the heat of the summer, now we came at a very nice time, it's cool. In the heat of the summer, it's not cool. Very hot. Very hot. At the place where I stayed, they didn't supply a sheet because people are not used to using sheets. It's just like, turn the fan on and the AC and it's hot. I asked for a sheet. But in the summer, you want... So, rather than asking for a fan and an air conditioning unit, Ikshvaku built a series of 5 fires all around and sat right in the middle, engaged in his prayer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Ranganath, please come to earth. In the rainy season, he sat out in the open air with one cloth for the whole 4 months of the rainy season, receiving torrential downpours of rain, praying to the Supreme Lord, please come and descend on earth. In the winter, he went way up north in the ice-cold water, with ice-cold water up to his neck, immersed for the whole winter, praying to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, please descend on earth. He was fixed in his purpose and trying to purify his mind and senses from any other desire but this one desire. Lord Indra started getting anxious. Maybe he's doing all these austerities because he wants to take over my kingdom. So he did one of the Indra programs. He sent apsaras, some of his best apsaras, Urvashi and Menaka and many other apsaras, and came dancing and, doing apsara-like things, wiggling and singing and trying to attract Ikshvaku. He just smiled and honored them. Indra thought, he's big opposition. He sent his thunderbolt weapon to destroy Ikshvaku. Sudarshan Chakra countered the thunderbolt weapon to protect Ikshvaku. Even Lord Brahma heard of these intense austerities that Ikshvaku was doing, and he understood the purpose. He went to Lord Ranganath and said, Lord Ranganath, you're the Lord of my life, and I know that you're very pleased upon your very dear devotees. And Ikshvaku is certainly one of those very dear devotees, but if you leave, it is like taking away my life. Lord Ranganath is very expert. He said, don't worry, Lord Brahma. The time here in Brahmaloka and the time on earth is so different that if I go after the morning offering and I'm just gone before the next offering, so many cycles of yugas and so many manus and so many lifetimes of living entities will pass, and then I'll come back and take the noon offering. So Lord Brahma was satisfied because it was the desire of the Lord, and he would return. So he personally, Lord Brahma personally brought Ranganath to Ayodhya, which was the capital of Ikshvaku's dynasty, the Surya dynasty. And for generations following Ikshvaku, the kings personally engaged in worship of Lord Ranganath in Ayodhya, but we're not in Ayodhya. So how did Ranganath get from Ayodhya to here? The detail is described as follows. At the time of the yajna that Dasarath was arranging so that he would have sons to carry on the lineage, because there were no sons, he invited kings from all over the land because he was the great emperor Dasarath. So the other kings came to pay their honor and sanctify this wonderful festival. One of those kings was from this area, Srirangam area, and his name was Dharmavaram. Dharmavaran went to honor Dasarath, and when he went to Dasarath's kingdom, he saw the beautiful form of Lord Ranganath, and he was so enchanted that he was thinking, how wonderful if Ranganath could come here to Srirangam. But how is that possible? He's the worshipable deity of the Surya dynasty. and most powerful and most revered dynasty. Like a child wishing to capture the moon. He was thinking in this way. So he came to a place nearby, Chandra Sarovar, or in the local language, Chandra Puskarini, and he engaged in severe austerities. After some time, Dasarath had his 4 sons, the eldest of them being Ram. By circumstance, Ram, instead of being coronated, was banished. For those 14 years that Ram was in exile, Sita was kidnapped by Ravan. Ravan was destroyed by Ram. Sita was regained at the hand of Ram, and along with Ravan's brother, Vibhishan, who was then crowned the king of Lanka to replace the destroyed Ravan, Vibhishan accompanied Ramachandra in his Vimana, Pushpaka Vimana, to go back to resume his rule in Ayodhya. When Vibhishan went to Ayodhya, in the Leela it appeared that he had his ambition. He wanted to take over the kingdom from Ravan. At least some thought that way. In this description, Vibhishan didn't want to return to Ayodhya, to Lanka. He wanted to stay in Ayodhya with Ram. He pleaded with Ram, please let me stay. We'll figure some other arrangement to take care of who can rule Lanka. I want to stay with you. Ram said, no, this is your service unto me. But I know how attached you are to me. Therefore, this deity, this Ranganath deity, that has been worshipped since the beginning of time by our dynasty, I will give to you. And you can worship this deity, and you can know that this deity is not different from me. When you see this deity, your heart's desire will be fulfilled, as good as being with me. And you're a very powerful Rakshasa. You have many mystic powers. With these mystic powers, you can simply carry Ranganath all the way to Lanka. Like Hanuman had his mystic powers, he could carry a mountain. Vibhishan had his mystic powers. He could carry the whole deity of Ranganath. Because the deity, as we saw, it's not just the deity of Ranganath, or even just the deity of Ranganath and Anantashesh with his 5 hoods and the many coils. It's the whole asana, the whole Singhasan, the whole setup, the whole facility for his worship. It's all part of the worship. So Vibhishan lifted Ranganath and carried him in a southerly direction. Now there are different versions. One was that he had to answer the call of nature and halted here. Another version is that he knew the strong desire of Dharma Varma, the king of this area, and came here simply to allow Dharma Varma to worship him. And there was a big festival. Vaishnavas like festivals. Big festival, 9-day festival in honor of Lord Ranganath. And Dharma Varman was thinking, the Lord has fulfilled my desire. He is the Lord of my life. He wishes to fulfill my desire, and so he's come. And Vibhishan was thinking, when he heard this from Dharma Varman, you want Ranganath to stay? he was given to me by Lord Ram, so that when I see him, I'll not feel the pain of separation from Lord Ram. And they had a little kingly disagreement. No, he's my Lord. No, he's my Lord. No, he's my Lord. No, he's my Lord. And Ranganath then spoke and said, I'm not just the Lord of this one, that one, I'm the Lord of everyone. But Vibhishan, you're a Rakshasa. You can come and go as you like. You can come here anytime you wish. But these other less qualified persons than you, at least by mystic powers, they can't, if I were to go to Lanka, they couldn't take my darshan. He says, you're both my dear devotees. So I'll maintain my residence here. And in a very unusual fashion, deities normally are facing east. This deity is facing south. I'll always be looking at you, and you'll always be able to see me. And every 40 years you can personally come and do my worship. But every day you can come and take my darshan. And these devotees here will do my seva. So Vibhishan accepted. This is the will of the Lord. And in this way, Ranganath made his residence here in Srirangam. After some time passed, this is noteworthy. It's one of the themes that, for my appreciation, keeps evolving. And that is, time destroys all things, even good things. So after some time, the worship of Ranganath deteriorated. Vibhishan would come every 40 years, but the temple had deteriorated, the worship had deteriorated, everything had gone down. In fact, the deity was underneath an anthill, and the anthill was underneath a tree. And there were parrots in the tree who would speak the glories of the deity who was underneath the tree and underneath the anthill, underneath the tree. One descendant of Varma, named Kikili, he heard the parrots, not the crows, the parrots, chanting the glories of the deity, and he listened carefully. And as he listened carefully, he understood within this anthill there's an amazing deity. And he opened up the anthill and found the deity, and he established a wonderful temple. And for generations, the worship of Ranganath was restored. But once again, the time factor destroys all things, even good things. I mean, the application for us is, this is me speaking, Srila Prabhupada has given us something so wonderful. His teachings, Harinam Sankirtan, deity worship, temples, the association of devotees, his books, his wonderful teachings. And we're to preserve it. It's one of the instructions that Prabhupada gave. If nothing else, even if you don't expand the Hare Krishna movement, at least maintain what I've given you. One of his other instructions related was, don't sell the property of your spiritual master in order to maintain the property of your spiritual master. And he explained, this is what commonly happens with a wealthy person. The next generation, they live off his wealth. The next generation, they sell his wealth to maintain themselves. Tosan Krishna Prabhu, one of my godbrothers, described this to me, that he was GBC in Vrindavan some years after Srila Prabhupada left. And they were having difficulty maintaining the Vrindavan temple. So they started selling the assets that had been generated during the time that Prabhupada was there. One of the assets, he told me specifically, was there was a what do you call those things? A water tank on top of the Gurukul building. And in order to help maintain the temple, they were going to sell the water tank on top of the Gurukul building. And Tosan had a Tosan fit. When you know Tosan, you know what that means. He let them have it. You can't do this. Prabhupada said, we must... So whatever downsizing there may be, Prabhupada's instruction was maintained. And it's incumbent upon all of you. We were receiving very special treatment and attention from Murali Bhatt, Nirmala Mataji and myself, because we're Prabhupada disciples, and we were very fortunate to receive all of his wonderful words and kindness and giving us different histories of Srirangam. And we'll try to pass those on to you. But it's you who have to maintain the Hare Krishna movement, and don't look to the next person. It's you who have to maintain the Hare Krishna movement. I'll say it again. It is you, not the person next to you or somebody else. Nanda Gopal will do it. We'll just go along for the ride and, la da 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 da, everything's nice. We have to maintain and preserve and push forward the Hare Krishna movement, because in course of time, it's either progress or regress. There's no standing still in spiritual life. So, if everything else you forget, don't forget this one thing. Out of the whole Yatra, you all are to preserve and maintain the integrity, the teachings, the worship, the gift of Srila Prabhupada to this world that can give Krishna consciousness to others. Be Krishna conscious, receive it nicely, give it to others. Don't look to someone else to do it. Take that responsibility. Take it into your heart and carry it forward. Be truly exemplary of the teachings that you hear. Strive in that way, and Krishna will empower you. Krishna will empower you beyond your imagination. Krishna will empower you, step by step. So after some time, the worship of Sri Ranganath disappeared from this earth. Then came one of the Alvars, Tirumangai Alvar. He became a very elevated spiritual personality, a sadhu. But previously, he was the son of a wealthy landholder. But he wasn't interested, something like Ranganath Das Goswami, he wasn't interested in the wealth of his father and his family and all of those things. He was interested in pure devotional service. Because he was born in this qualified family, it was very much the desire of his parents that he become married. And they had selected, the parents had selected a suitable girl to marry. Kumudavali was her name. So when the parents made the proposal to her parents, her reply was, "I won't marry unless he's initiated." So he became initiated. And then after his initiation, the parents again spoke to her parents, and the girl said, "I'll only marry him if he is a charitable Vaishnav, if he feeds 1,000 Vaishnavas every day for several months. Then I'll understand his merit and I'll be happy to marry him." he did this not just for several months, he did it for 1 year. And he was liking it very much, serving the Vaishnavas. Not just serving prasadam, but he really got into the mood of serving the Vaishnavas. So much so that he became disinterested altogether in marriage. And just became a sadhu. And thanked the girl from a distance very much. You sent me on the path of pure devotional service. And as he began hearing the teachings of the Sri Vaishnava line, he developed strong Vaishnava attraction. And he wrote many songs. And he accepted as disciples all different types of people. Some very unusual types of people. 4 of those unusual types of people were mystic yogis, became his disciples. These 4 became very close associates of Tirumangai. And when he came to this area, he heard the glories of Sri Ranganath. But he recognized the condition of the worship of Sri Ranganath is very deteriorated. Something moved in his heart. And he said, we should establish a temple. So along with his associates, they went from door to door. Because in this area, there were fabulously wealthy people. Something very similar to what we hear in Chaitanya Bhagavat, who are just misusing their piety and the fruits of their piety in materialistic activity. And so when he came to the door begging some small offering to build a temple for the deity, they just laughed at him. Why bother? We don't need this. You find some way, go get a job. Find some way to build the temple yourself. And that went on for some period of time, and it hurt his devotion. That didn't hurt his pride. It hurt his devotion to see these people in this such unfortunate circumstance of life. And some inspiration started welling within his heart to relieve them of that which they are so proud of, their wealth. If they won't do it voluntarily, we can relieve them of their wealth involuntarily. So along with his 4 mystic disciples, a whole group of persons gathered together, a whole growing band of dacoits. One of the mystic yogis, just by stepping on someone's shadow, they couldn't move. Another one, by speaking to them, they would be mesmerized and they couldn't move from that dialogue. Another one could pick any lock. And in this way, using these mystic abilities, another could walk on water. Using these mystic arts, they would go from place to place, have a conversation, pick the lock, and relieve the people of their source of pride, their wealth, and started building the temple. He engaged architects to build this fantastic temple. Huge, as devotees were saying, very complex. For the worship of Ranganath. And the system of 7 huge walls, just like in Vaikuntha. The gates of Vaikuntha have 7 gates. And so 7 big walls, and inside the walls, different places, and inside those walls, and Ranganath inside the middle. And it took some number of years. Who knows the number of years? 60 years? Something like that? Anybody know? Many years. And finally, the temple was completed. then there was a problem. Because Tiramangai, he personally lived very simply. With all of this wealth that was for the worship of Ranganath, he lived in a little hut, straw hut. And he went door to door and did madhukari to accept his meals. He personally lived very simply. But these fellows, these are dacoits, they weren't austere like him and pure like him. They wanted some bakshish. They wanted some remuneration. And they understood, okay, while the temple is being built, but after the temple is built, they wanted something. And he wasn't prepared to remunerate them for their service to Lord Ranganath. So they started making a plan to kill him. One of the Alvars. And he came to know, his four mystics came to know of this plan. And so they made a counter plan. The counter plan was, they held a little rogue, thief, and bandit conference, promising them that they would reward them enormously, that Tiramangai knew of a very special treasure. But they would all have to go together and share it fairly, equally. No such thing as fairness amongst thieves. The treasure was in an island in the middle of the Kaveri River. And so they had to get on the boat, and as they were crossing the boat, the disciple of Tiramangai, who knew how to walk on water, was on the boat. And the boat sank because they pulled the plugs in the boat and the boat sank. And none of them knew how to swim. They were good at robbing and thieving and dacoit activity, but they didn't know how to swim, and they all drowned. Because of their service, Tiramangai said, they achieved liberation. And they were relieved of the reaction of potentially killing Tiramangai by this act. So they all went back to Godhead. And to understand, this is one of these activities we don't imitate. We want to build a temple. People aren't contributing to build a temple. Yad acharati shreshtas, we'll just get a bunch of dacoits together and build a temple. It's very, very unique, something we don't imitate. His purpose was directly inspired by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He was on such a platform. But his desire was just like Narada cursing Nalakuvera and Manigriva. Narada's interest wasn't slapping them down, hurting them, giving them some difficulty. Narada's interest was one thing. These two sons of Kuvera, their pride is destroying their good qualities. And there's a one thing that's the source of their pride, and that's their wealth and their position as the sons of Kuvera. So they should be deprived of this just so they can become pure. That was his interest. And the fruit of that can be used for, in his case, so qualified to use that in the service of Ranganath. This was 1,500 years ago. Is that right? Something like that. So the temple is very, very old. Over a period of time, the temple has been renovated. We heard from Murali Bhatt some history that I didn't hear before today. I'll share it with you briefly. Ramanujacarya's life, who knows the dates of his birth and his disappearance? Ramanujacarya, do you know? Huh? 770? 1070. So 1070, and he lived for 120 years, Ramanuja. So 1070 plus 120 is 1190. From the time Ramanujacarya was present, ending 1190 approximately, we saw inside his samadhi, where his original form was placed in samadhi, and there's a murti there. Approximately 200 years plus something passed where everything was very peaceful and going on very nicely. Following the lineage of Ramanujacarya and great acharyas. Then there was a king whose name I couldn't catch, but some very horrific history took place, where there was a king, a Muslim king, who came to attack, and for 48 years all the Vaishnava activity stopped, and the Muslims occupied the temple. They not only occupied the temple and stopped the activities, but they stopped the lives of 12,000. Irmala? He was giving us the number of 12,000. Huh? He repeatedly said 12,000 Vaishnavas were decapitated here in Srirangam. The Utsav Murti was taken by the successor Acharya in the Ramanuja line. Some places, and eventually in Madurai. And for those number of years, 48 years, the Utsav Murti of Ranganath was worshipped there. The main Mula Murti, they put up a wall of stone, so they couldn't figure out because there's so many stone walls here. Behind the stone wall was the Mula Murti that for all those years was not directly receiving worship. And after those 48 years, one Vaishnava king from Andhra came and defeated the Muslims, and Ranganath was restored. The worship of Ranganath was restored by the same line of the Ramanujacarya leaders. The number we were given was 750 of the Vaishnavas went elsewhere and survived that horrific period. And following that period they returned and then again resumed the worship of Ranganath, removed the wall, the Utsav Murti came back. So, obstacles in devotional service can't match that one. And presently today, that place where the Utsav Murti was taken, Murali Bhatt said he and some associates of his, just maybe within his lifetime, that the worship that took place there was restored, and he and his family have taken personal responsibility for that worship, along with, as we came out, or perhaps you saw when you went in, a temple of Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman, where his family, his brother-in-law was there with the long hair doing the puja. They're taking responsibility for that worship. And another one of his brothers was attending Ranganath when we went in. And Murali Bhatta is one of the, just as Venkata Bhatta, we read in Chaitanya Charitamrita that his service was one of the chief temple administrators. What's the term that he used? Can you recall?
I thought he said chief priest.
Chief priest. And then Irmala asked, how many chief priests are there? And he said 5. So he is one of the chief priests of the whole of this very complex arrangement. And therefore he could take us wherever he wanted. And we could have spent the whole day in there seeing so many places. So Srirangam has such great importance going as far back as time goes, when Sri Ranganath came here during the time of Ramachandra, Vibhishan bringing him here by the will of the Supreme Lord and his dear devotee, Dharma Varam. And until this time, through Treta Yuga, Dwarpa Yuga, Kali Yuga, with Kali Yuga interruption, the worship of Ranganath going on wonderfully. There have been there was restoration of the temple following the Muslim occupation. So some of the construction seems newer than other parts of the construction, but very, very like eternal, Vaikuntha feeling in the atmosphere of the worship. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I'm sitting here looking at Chaitanya Mahaprabhu standing by the side of the Garuda Stamba looking at Jagannath. In his instruction from Navadvip Dham Mahatmya, we discussed this when Ramanujacarya went to Puri and saw the standard of the worship of Puri, because Jagannath is one of the 108 principal deities that they regard. So he went to Puri, wished to correct the not Pancharatriki standards of worship, and Lord Jagannath threw him out of Puri. I like this worship. You're right, it's not standard, but I like it. So according to the Puranas, he was thrown to Kamara Kshetra. According to Navadvip Dham Mahatmya, he was thrown first to Navadvip. And when he awoke, there he was in front of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who spoke to him and said that there are two teachings from each of the four sampradayas which I am going to hold forth and honor when I appear later. And the two from your sampradaya that are so wonderful are these two teachings. One of them is service to the Vaishnavas is of utmost pleasing quality to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We heard yesterday of Kanchi Purna's little it's a Kanchi Purna. The importance of serving the devotees of the Lord. And the second, bhakti that's unmixed with karma and gyan. These two very, very fundamental teachings of Ramanujacarya's teaching are very, very fundamental teachings of Lord Chaitanya's teachings. Anyabhilasha shunyam jnana karmadhyanavratam. Right there. And to be a qualified follower of Lord Chaitanya, qualified follower of Srila Prabhupada, these two qualities should be exhibited by us. And to repeat a message from the very beginning of our yatra, how we conduct ourselves when we're interacting amongst ourselves as well as with others, our mood should be that humble mood. That our life is to serve the devotees. Both Murali Bhatt and now the Murali who's worshipping the Jagannath deity, immediately one could see that quality in them. Isn't it? Urmila? Immediately. It's not, I'm up here and you're down here. Not at all. They are up there and we're down here. But their mood is simply humble service. And that speaks volumes it's so attractive to be in their association. It attracts one to their love for the Lord of their life. That's how we can most powerfully preach Krishna consciousness, by having true Vaishnava qualities. So, I don't know how we're going to do this, but our next program is breakfast. And there's darshan here, there's the house of Venkatabhatta, but we're not going to be able to file our group in and out of the house. We can pay, because he said, I asked, where did Lord Chaitanya stay in this house? He said, throughout the whole house. The Murtis, just like the Murtis of Ramanujacarya, before we were in Kanchipuram, and we saw the deity of Varadaraj. So while here, Ramanujacarya worshipped, we saw by his samadhi little deities of Varadaraj, Bu, and Shri, and his spiritual master, Jamunacharya, a little murti behind him of his brother Govinda or cousin Govinda. So similarly, Lord Chaitanya worships some deities. Venkatabhatta worships some deities that are inside his house. They're also very small deities, personally worshipped. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally worshipped these deities and personally made them with his own hand. So we can take darshan of Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra, offer our prayers to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the wonderful service of the family that served him, being represented today by Murali Bhatt. We'll be probably interacting with him again. I don't know what's coming attractions, how it's going to work out, but I'm sure it will happen.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
When we were at the at the temple of Sitaram, Lakshman, and Hanuman, the Murali Bhatt, because his family takes charge of that deity, and his brother-in-law was doing the puja or receiving the guests at that time when we came. Murali went in the back and brought out some prasadam. We were distributing the prasadam, and Sriman and his brother were busy playing in the sand. And he was more interested in playing in the sand than taking prasadam. So Murali Bhatt said, it reminded him of, it's like associating with a devotee of Srila Prabhupada or a devotee of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when things that they see remind them of their lineage. So he remembered a past time where Ramanujacarya was passing and some little children were playing in the sand, and one little child came up and asked Ramanujacarya, how many grains of sand do I have in my hand? You're a great sadhu, you must know everything. How many grains of sand do I have in my hand? And Ramanuja smiled and said, I don't know. He said, I have a handful. Another time, Ramanujacarya was passing, and some children were playing like that, playing in the sand. And they were with the sand, they had a little deity of Ranganath, and they were making offerings to Ranganath. I've seen this in Gita Nagari. One child is the leader, and he says, okay, I'll be Krishna, you be Balaram, you be this one, you be that one, and they enact the pastimes of the Lord. So the children were doing like that, just playing, but playing in the mood of enacting the pastimes of the Lord. So the children saw Ramanuja come, walking along with his devotees, and they all respectfully paid their obeisances. And one of them came running up with a pile of sand in his hand and said, "Here, this is the prasad of Ranganath." And Ramanujacarya accepted it with the same devotion that it was like the normal kind of prasad we think about, and he began eating it, thinking or appreciating the devotion with which the children were making their, although it was just child play. Did everyone here get to see the samadhi of Ramanujacarya? If you didn't the first time, the second time, everyone saw? Good. So, the deity of Ramanuja behind very large Mula Murti of Ramanujacarya, but in front were the deities that he personally worshipped and mentioned when he was living in Srirangam. Because the Sri Vaishnavas, they accept that Lord Narayana is the highest truth, he from whom all expansions of the Purusha avatars and the Leela avatars and all other avatars come. That's their understanding from the Padma Purana and the Vishnu Purana, and their principal sources of authority. Very similar to, I mentioned this, when there's worship of Shalagram, depending upon the mood of worship that one approaches Shalagram, he accepts your mood of worship. If you worship him as Lord Ramachandra, if you worship him as Nrsingadev, and so forth, Shalagram Shila receives your worship. However, there are different Shilas that, according to the shape, and those that are very knowledgeable in the whole science of Shalagram worship, some have particular shapes that indicate this is a Nrsinga Shila or this is a Varaha Shila, etc. In the Nrsinga temple, there's one very large Nrsinga deity that's carved from a very large Shalagram Shila, very large. And then in front there's a Nrsinga Shila. So, Jamunacharya, when he came here, because he was very attached to Varadaraj and Kanchipurna, he brought that devotion with him, and he worshipped Varadaraj and Shri and Bhu personally. Small deities we saw at his samadhi, about that big, because that was his Ishtadev. Pankajangri, Jananivas in Mayapur described this experience they had with Lord Nrsingadev in Mayapur. Some of you may have heard this before, but it fits in with this same message I'm just sharing here. At some point in time in Mayapur, Sridham Mayapur, our ISKCON temple, there was the original deity that Srila Prabhupada installed for our Radhamadava temple was Radhamadava about this tall, and Radharani was very golden in color compared to Madhava. And apparently some people who saw the deity thought maybe they made a deity of solid gold, and so they came to steal the deity in the middle of the night. And there was a confrontation, there was some gunfire, and that's when Bhakti Raghava Swami lost half of one of his legs, because he got shot in the leg with a shotgun. trying to protect and defend the deity. So following that, the devotees decided, very similar to what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had previously decided at the Chaitanya Gaudiya Math, to install a Nrsimha deity. So the devotees came from Mayapur. Jananivas personally came and described, they searched for the best known marble carver deity maker. And they found one that was the most renowned. And they described what they wanted. In fact, on the way, Bhavananda had a dream on the train ride down. They came together. And he had a dream of a very particular form of Lord Nrsimhadev. So he described that form of Lord Nrsimhadev to the Murti maker. And the Murti maker was, "Oh, you want that form?" They said, "Yes, we want that form." He said, "I know that form. I can make that form for you. It will take X number of months." So it turns out it's the form of Lord Nrsimhadev as he's just about to pounce on Hiranyakashipu. You see the deity, there's no Hiranyakashipu on his lap. It's Prahlad and Ugra Nrsimha. And his teeth and his ears and his nails, and like a cat ready to pounce on its prey. So the Murti maker was given a deposit, and he began making the Murti. Meanwhile, there was a man somewhere in South India that didn't like ISKCON. And then he heard that ISKCON is having this Murti maker make a deity of Lord Nrsimhadev to protect ISKCON, Mayapur. So he went to the Murti maker and he offered him double the price. "Sell the Murti to me and don't sell it to them." He said, "I'm sorry. I've already made a contract and I've accepted the deposit and I'm not going to violate this." The man was like pressuring and pressuring, I'll give you more, and I'll destroy you if you don't, and nothing worked. The man said, "I'm not budging. This is Brahminical work, serving the devotees of the Lord. I'm not going to be intimidated or not going to be bribed." Later the man did some more research and he found out that any person who has ever installed this form of the Lord, Ugra Nrsimha, is guaranteed to make some offense and they are destroyed. So he thought, great, ISKCON will be destroyed. Hurry up and finish the Murti. That was, his mind changed the other direction. When the devotees came, they received word that the Murti was finished. They came to examine the finished product, and the man told him, the Murti maker, told them of this envious individual who came and tried to bribe him, tried to threaten him. And then he came back later and said, "Oh, I heard that one who worships this form was destroyed. Please hurry and finish it as quickly as you can." But one thing I didn't tell him was, when Nrsimhadev is worshipped along with another form of the Lord, and that other form of the Lord is the principal form, then Nrsimhadev takes on the mood of that principal form. And since your principal worship is Radha Madhava, he'll take on the benediction-giving mood of Radha Madhava. So don't worry. You'll be both protected and benedicted at the same time. So Ramanujacarya worshipped Lord Vardaraja, while the principal deity is Sri Ranganath. But Ranganath, as we heard, this is the form of Mahavishnu that Lord Brahma wished to have darshan of and could continue worship of. And in the line of the Surya dynasty, King Ikshvaku and the descendants of Dasarath, and then up to the descendants of Dasarath, and then Vibhishan brought Ranganath here. Some very nice descriptions that we didn't get to complete while we were in Kanchipuram, particular to Kanchipurna. When they wanted the devotees here in Srirangam wanted Ramanuja to come from Kanchipuram Mahapurna was the one who went to Ranganath and prayed, please give some understanding to us, give us the inspiration, give us the intelligence, how we can bring him here. And it was Ranganath who imparted to Mahapurna, this is going to be very difficult because of the loving bond between Ramanuja and Varadaraj, and between Ramanuja and Kanchipurna. Very difficult to interrupt a loving affair. Don't get in the middle of a loving relationship. Good advice. But that strategy was given, or the approach of sending the son of Ramanujacarya, who sang very nicely, to go to Kanchi, and every day before the deity of Varadaraj sing very, very beautiful songs, melting the heart of Varadaraj, and then he can make the prayer to Varadaraj, please make some arrangement for Ramanuja to come. We need him here to rule and lead us in the Sri Sampradaya. And it was Varadaraj who imparted to Kanchipurna the message, please let Ramanuja know, because Kanchipurna had this simplicity and love that had resulted in such an intimate relationship. His fanning and his speaking and singing songs for the pleasure of Varadaraj, to his heart's content. So one time there was a very simple man, a Shudra, who approached approached Kanchipurna and said, everyone knows that you have this capacity to receive messages from the Lord of the whole creation. Could you ask him, will it be possible for me to go back to Godhead in some lifetime? So Kanchipurna, in the midst of his fanning and singing songs, he would deliver messages and ask questions, and Varadaraj would give his reply. And Varadaraj gave the reply to Kanchipurna. You can tell this nice devotee that because he's attached to you, at the end of this life he'll go back to Godhead. So Kanchipurna was very happy to deliver such messages. He says you're going to go back to Godhead at the end of this lifetime. He didn't tell him why. But then Kanchipurna started to get a little agitated in his mind, thinking, will I go back to Godhead? And he wanted to ask Vardaraja, but he didn't want to come out and say it, because who wants to say such a thing? So he just fanned, and days passed where it was, in his heart was the desire, but in the words were not coming out of his mouth. So after some days, Varadaraj said, is there something in your mind that you wish to say to me, but you're not saying? He said, my Lord, you know my heart's desire. Yes, there is. Is in some point in time, in some lifetime, will I also go back to Godhead? Enter Vaikuntha? Lord Radha. And we have this nice relationship. You like to talk to me and receive messages from me, and so I talk to you, and you receive messages from me. But as far as going back to Godhead, that's not so easy. One has to serve the Vaishnavas in order to go back to Godhead. Varadaraj spoke like that. Kanchipurna immediately put his fan down, left Kanchipuram, and came straight to Srirangam, here in Srirangam. And he disguised himself so expertly as a common laborer, and without Mahapurnas even knowing it, he just somehow mixed in with the servants who were assisting Mahapurna and lived in a servant's quarters. And because he was so expert in the service, Mahapurna didn't know who this was, just somebody who had come. I put my watch down, I don't know where I put it. For several months, something like 6 months, he was incognito serving Mahapurna, his godbrother. And so intimate the relationship became that Mahapurna didn't even know his name, he just said, "Our boy. My dear boy, please come here. Can you fetch some water? My dear boy, can you take care of this? Can you clean this area? Can you make sure the pots are clean after their meal?" And his life became dependent upon our boy. Very affectionate. Then one day, he was taking care of the cows, Kanchipurna. And there was a torrential downpour of rain. So much rain that he could barely rescue the cows for safety. And after the cows were made safe, his clothes were completely drenched. So the only other clothes he had to wear were his sadhu clothes. So he sat in the barn and put on his sadhu clothes and was just sitting there chanting peacefully, waiting to make sure that the cows were still going to be safe in the midst of the storm. Meanwhile, Mahapurna, being a qualified person, wasn't just concerned with the service, he was concerned with the servant. And so he began thinking, I wonder if our boy is okay. I know he brought the cows in safely, but is he okay? It was a very terrible storm. So he went to search to find him. He couldn't find him in his room, and he became very concerned, and he found him in the cow barn. And there he was in the cow barn chanting. And when he saw him dressed in his sadhu clothes, he recognized him. He said, "What are you doing? You're Kanchipurna. You're not our boy. You're my godbrother and worshipable. You directly communicate with Varadaraj. For all these months I've been taking your service. Oh, this is terrible. I'm finished. We can't continue accepting you in your service in this way." So very humbly, Kanchipurna went back, picked up his fan, and resumed fanning Varadaraj. And Varadaraj said, surely you will be going back to Godhead at the end of this lifetime for this simple service to the Vaishnavas. Another time, very similar description. Koresh desired, let me find the reference. To understand the meaning, he wanted Ramanujacarya to explain the meaning of Bhagavad Gita 1866. Because this verse Ramanuja had disclosed is such an important verse. Just like when we visited the temple of Varadaraj, on his benediction giving hand is Masuchaha, by surrender unto the personality of Godhead. That just like the form of Sriranganath, there's two hands. You saw? One, his left hand is pointing to his feet. By surrender unto me, you'll please me very much. His other hand is pointing to his smiling face. This you will make me, by making me very happy in this way, you'll achieve life's perfection. So, I want to be sure to get this correct as best as I can. Excuse me, I'll find it. Here it is. Yeah. Ramanuja spoke to Koresh the following. Koresh, you're a great scholar, a highly learned person and well respected by everyone in all regards. However, it's not simply a matter of gaining knowledge, and by gaining knowledge, then you'll realize the absolute truth. It's possible instead to receive transcendental knowledge if your heart has become very meek and humble. So I'll give you an answer to this question if you perform Madhukari for 1 year. Now, Koresh previously was a king. Not just like a prince, but he was a king. That's what his name means. He was the Isha of the Kuru province. The Kuru province is an area, tract of land, not far from Kanchi. And he was such a fabulously wealthy landholder, fabulously wealthy, that lived in a big house, had big land holdings, big wall around his big house, and a big gate to keep him safe at night. And every morning, as the sun would rise, the gate would open. And all day long, to the capacity that Koresh had, he and his wife very liberally distributed charity to anybody and everybody that came to their gate. And at the end of the day, as the sun set, they closed the gate. And in this way, he lived his life serving the people of his kingdom. One day, when Kanchipurna was fanning Varadaraj, there was a sound, very audible. And Lakshmi spoke to Kanchipurna and said, "What's that?" He said, "Oh, that's the gate of Koresh because he closes it at sunset." And when he closes it at sunset, it makes a loud creaking sound. And all day long he's giving charity to others. He's a very magnanimous person. And Lakshmi said, oh, he's very magnanimous and giving in charity, although he's so wealthy. I would like to meet him. Can you make an arrangement to bring him here? So Kanchipurna passed the message to Krish that the goddess of fortune wants your audience. Can you please come? And Krish heard that, and he wasn't thinking like we might be thinking. He was thinking, oh no, this mundane personality, namely me, just by material activity of giving and charity, and somehow thinking highly of himself, has somehow, the word has gotten out, this proud person is now being called before the goddess of fortune. This is terrible. And he spoke to his wife and said, enough of this pretension of being a magnanimous personality. Let us both just get rid of all of this. In one day's time, I'd like to give up my entire kingdom and simply go and serve the devotees in Srirangam. And his wife was fully supportive of the mood of her husband. Within one day, they gave to the Brahmanas and to the Vaishnavas all of his wealth, his entire kingdom, all of his possessions, all of his treasury. Everything was given away, except he kept one cloth and she kept one cloth. And in their simplicity of mendicants, went from Kanchipuram to Srirangam. And as they were passing through the forested area, his wife Andal became anxious. And she expressed that to her husband. I'm very afraid that in these wild places there's thieves and anything could happen. So Krish said to his wife, does that mean that you haven't given everything up, that you're still holding on to some worldly possession? Tell me the truth. She said, no, it's true, I've given up everything, except I kept one gold bowl just to feed you, as a vessel, to serve you your meals. He said, let me see that bowl. It's because, and he held it and said, it's because of this attachment to something of this world that you consider to be valuable, that someone might take it from you, that you have fear in your heart. Let's get rid of the last trace of worldly attachment and threw it into the forest. And from that point on to their trip into Srirangam, they were free from any anxiety and fear. So this is a former king being asked by Ramanujacarya to perform Madhukari for a year. Not like, okay, Prabhus, welcome to our Yatra in South India, and we're going to practice humility today. And so everybody, no prasadam, just go out and hold your upper garment out, and whoever you meet, you can ask them to give you some alms. Is that all right? As a matter of fact, let's do that for a whole year. Welcome to our Yatra. That's what Ramanujacarya said to a king and his wife. And he performed Madhukari for a whole year here in Srirangam. And at the end of that 1 year's time, Ramanujacarya imparted the understanding, not just the knowledge, but the realization into the heart of Krish, the meaning, the mood of Krishna's message to Arjuna in his last instruction to him in Bhagavad Gita. Hearing that this had taken place, Dasarati, another one of Ramanujacarya's great devotees, vastly learned, highly scholarly, brilliant personality, asked the same question. Ramanujacarya's reply, very strong. Oh, powerful scholar, knowledge, aristocracy, and the fruits of one's past piety may be very much valued in this world, but at the same time they can make one's heart very hard. So hard due to pride that more transcendental knowledge simply makes one's heart more proud. Real devotion then is far away, and to understand the message of Bhagavad Gita without real devotion, it will never be possible. Scholarship is not the means of understanding. So if you want to hear the meaning of Krishna's instructions in Bhagavad Gita, the mood, the real essence of it, for 6 months, you go to Srirangam. Excuse me. Go to Gostipurna and serve him for 6 months. Go to that place. So he served Gostipurna for 6 months. After serving him for 6 months, Gostipurna said, "Very good. Now you go back and ask Ramanujacarya for the answer to your question." As he came back to Srirangam, he came before Ramanujacarya, and just at that same time, in Ramanujacarya's presence, the younger daughter of Mahapurna, whose name was Atulai, came before Ramanujacarya crying, saying, "My in-laws, they treat me so harshly, so cruelly. I try my very best to serve them." I've heard this one before. "So carefully, so diligently, so nicely, and nothing I do satisfies them. Everything I do is second class, third class, 10th class. They just criticize. It's never enough no matter what I do from morning till night. And I don't get any relief. Ramanujacarya, please help me." I could, play a recording of that one. Slightly different versions. Ramanujacarya turned to Dasarati, the great scholar, and said, "Dasarati, I want you to return with Atulai, and you do all that service that her relatives are expecting her to do that are not satisfied. You go, and you be their servant until you hear from me otherwise." Immediately, great scholar, Dasarati goes to the in-laws of Atulai and does this menial service. They didn't know who he was. Ramanuja knew who he was, but they didn't know who he was. He's just like somebody who came back with their daughter-in-law. And he was a really good servant. He knew how to clean the barn and sweep the floor and take out the garbage and, do all the household chores. Cut the vegetables, go to the market, everything. He was really, really good. And it went on for a whole year. He didn't say a word. "I'm Dasarati, big scholar." He just followed the instructions of his spiritual master to take the humble position. After a whole year had passed, there was one scholar, a Vaishnava, who came to that town, and he began speaking from the scriptures. But his speaking was tainted with Mayavad teaching, because Mayavad teaching was very prevalent at the time, and scholars pick up on a little of this and a little of that. So it was tainted with Mayavad philosophy. And Dasarati was in the audience, and he heard him speak tainted philosophy, and so very humbly he raised his hand and spoke something different. This Vaishnava erupted in anger and blasted him. "Who are you? You dare challenge? I'm a great scholar." Dasarati didn't become disturbed. He just, in a very calm tone, explained and explained and explained exactly what he had heard from Ramanujacarya. And the man was soundly defeated, and even admitted defeat, as proud as he was, because the explanations of Dasarati were so clear. And when he finished with his explanation, everyone was going, "Who are you? You're the servant of Mahapurna's son and daughter-in-law, or Mahapurna's daughter and son-in-law, but you're not just a servant. You're a very learned person. Who are you?" He said, "Oh, my name is Dasarati. I'm a disciple of Ramanujacarya." And they went, "You're a disciple of Ramanujacarya? You are Dasarati? This is horrible. For all this time we've been accepting service. Please go back and resume your service to Ramanuja." And his reply was, "I'm here on the order of my spiritual master. And for me, that's my life and soul." They couldn't accept that. So they went to Ramanujacarya and said, "Please do something. Dasarati is doing menial service in our home. This can't be. Please do something." So Ramanujacarya came to their village personally, embraced Dasarati, and said, "Now you're qualified to receive instruction in Krishna's message of Bhagavad Gita. Sarva dharmam parityaja mamekam sharanam vraja." The whole mood, not only the teaching, but the mood of Ramanujacarya and how he trained those who were under his care. Great personalities. He taught them humility and service to the devotees. And because of that humility and service to the devotees, they were then eligible, qualified to receive transcendental knowledge from him. And because they had humility, service mode, and transcendental knowledge, they were able to properly represent him in so many circumstances. So many circumstances. There was another disciple of Jamunacharya named Maladhara. Maladhara was a good friend of Goshtipurna. We heard about Goshtipurna the other day. One time Ramanuja was sitting and hearing Maladhara speak, and he heard something that was not according to Ramanuja's teaching. And at the end of the class he spoke up. Maladhara became very upset, but he didn't directly speak to Ramanuja. He went to Goshtipurna and said, "What's with this young fellow here? You know him, you've given him some mantra, but look at his behavior, he's contradicting me." And Goshtipurna said, "Don't think of him as ordinary. Jamunacharya speaks through him. Think of him in that way." Oh, Jamunacharya speaks through him. So another time when Maladhara was speaking, Ramanujacarya again expressed, Jamunacharya's teachings are like this, not like that. As Maladhara was hearing, he heard Jamunacharya speaking through him. This proper position of submission is repeated refrain in Ramanujacharya's teaching. Submission and service unto the Vaishnavas. Because of his renown and esteem, the name of the person isn't given, but there was one Brahmin, or at least by name Brahmin, here in Srirangam, who became very envious of Ramanuja's position. And he decided to do away with him, to poison him. So he explained his purpose to his wife, and then requested, I'm going to invite him to our home for a meal, and I want you to poison his food so that after he eats what you cooked, he'll die immediately. Put that much poison in his food. She didn't want to do that. She didn't want to disobey her husband either. So he invited Ramanuja to his home. When Ramanuja sat down to honor prasad, she didn't say, but she gestured in certain ways that Ramanujacarya understood he shouldn't eat that. So he didn't eat the food that she had prepared, and he left. When the husband returned and asked his wife what happened, his wife is a Brahmani. She didn't lie. She told the truth. I couldn't feed him poison. I couldn't do it. And the husband said, I understand that you broke the instruction that I gave, but I also understand why you did so. Therefore, I personally will finish him. So he made an arrangement, just like so much Charnamrita we took today. It's like, a couple of liters of Charnamrita, right? So many times, so many deities. So he arranged for some Charnamrita for Ramanujacharya and personally put it in his hand with enough poison to kill people. And Ramanujacharya knew, because his wife had explained this mentality. But he prayed to Ranganath, accepted the Charnamrita, and nothing happened. The Brahmana understood he's protected by the Supreme Lord. He's not an ordinary person. And I've made a big offense. He fell at his feet and became his follower, his disciple. There's another personality named Yajna Murti, who was one of those traveling pundits that came into town and wanted to find the greatest scholar, and right away everyone knew who the greatest scholar was Ramanuja. So he came to debate with Ramanuja. Ramanuja didn't want to debate with him, but at the same time he understood persons who are very proud, they need their pride to be curbed. So with some reluctance he accepted, simply for that purpose, to serve this poor fellow. But the poor fellow, Yajna was extremely scholarly, and the debate went all day long for 17 days. That's a long debate. Kind of get worn out after debating with people for even an hour, what to speak of 17 days. In the evening of the 17th day, Ramanujacharya went before his personal deity. We saw his personal deity. His name he had given was Devaraju. And he prayed to the deity, please deliver the world from this cloud of illusion that has so heavily covered it. Devaraju spoke to him and said, take courage. Surely you will defeat this foolish scholar. Don't worry. Mahasuchaha. Feeling empowered by his deity, the next day, at the 18th morning, he came before Yajna so radiant and effulgent. Right on the spot, Yajna surrendered to him. Said, you're not an ordinary personality. You're an extraordinary personality. And my pride has been defeated by your eminent qualification. And he later became his disciple. Yajna became Devaraj Muni, a very qualified follower of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Later, 4 young men came to Srirangam specifically for the purpose of seeking initiation from Ramanuja. Instruction and initiation. Ramanuja said, I have a very qualified disciple, Devaraj Muni. Go to him, seek instruction from him and initiation from him. So the 4 young men went to Devaraj Muni, and Devaraj Muni was bewildered. And he didn't say yes or no. He came to Ramanujacarya and said, "Why are you doing this? My whole life has been invested in pride and position and recognition and knowledge and all of those horrible impurities. And by your association, I've gotten free from that to some extent, but the tendency is very strong. Are you really serious that you want me to do this, or is this just a test?" And Ramanujacarya said, "It was a test. I just wanted to see if your position was truly that of a humble Vaishnava, simply wanting to serve in a humble, menial way. You don't have to instruct them, that's okay. I'll make some other arrangement." Just like Srila Prabhupada writes in Nectar of Instruction, the spiritual master is to examine the prospective disciple, and the prospective disciple is to examine the spiritual master to see really what is the quality. So sometimes there's examples like this where Ramanujacarya would examine a qualified devotee. How qualified are they, even after initiation? There's one description like that where Ramanujacarya was here in Srirangam, and he desired to make a visit to Tirupati. So on the way, with his entourage of some devotees, he went to a particular place where there were two disciples, two Grahastha couple disciples. One of them's name was Yagyesh, and he was a very wealthy personality, lots of facility, very nice devotee, very loving devotee, and very capable. And another was a very poor man, a Brahmin, but he didn't have facility. So Ramanujacarya felt it would be a little embarrassing for the other disciple, Varada Acharya, to take care of my whole group to spend the night. So probably better to go to Yagyesh's place. So he sent two of his devotees, simple devotees, in his entourage to go forward and find out if Yagyesh is able to receive our group for a meal this evening and a place to stay. Go forward and report back to us. So they went ahead of the party in advance, and they came to the door of Yagesh's big palatial residence and said, "Ramanujacarya, your Guru Maharaj, heading this way on his way to Tirupati, and he would like to know if you could accommodate him for the night and provide a meal for all of his traveling party." Yagesh was very excited. My existence, my family, my home, my life will now be made successful because Ramanujacarya is coming here to take shelter for an evening's visit. How fortunate. Immediately he began calling his servants and arranging for going to buy vegetables and someone to go take care of, inviting other guests and cleaning and making their rooms ready. And the plan was to have a big festival. And the two assistants of Ramanujacarya were very moved by how much devotion that Yagesh had for Ramanujacarya. So they went back and reported to Ramanujacarya. Yagesh was very excited. And he's doing this, doing that, so many things he described. Ramanujacarya was interested in one thing. How did they receive you? Householders, please listen carefully to this. When Jamunacharya heard, well, he was so excited in making arrangements for you, he didn't even give us a place to sit or ask us if we wanted some water. He just started getting really busy making all arrangements. And Ramanujacarya said, anyone who cannot properly receive my devotee, I have no interest to go there. Let us go to the home of Varda Acharya and his wife Lakshmi. So they went to the home of Varda Acharya and Lakshmi. At that particular time, the husband, Varda Acharya, was out begging because he was a poor Brahmin, and their only subsistence was whatever he would gather after some hours spent going in a simple village situation. Whatever he would bring back, that's what they had to eat for the day. So he was out of the house. And when Ramanujacarya came with his whole group of devotees, she was very happy and said, such good fortune. Ramanujacarya has come to our home. We have very little to offer, but whatever it is that we have, it's yours. You're our master, you're our Lord. And because you've been traveling, perhaps you should take bath first and let me see what I can gather together to properly honor you. So they went to take their bath by the nearby river, and she went into the storage room to see what was there, and sure enough, nothing was there because they're so poor. She didn't even have some handful of rice. Nothing. So Lakshmi then had a thought. There's a very wealthy merchant in our village. He's a very lusty, low-class person. And he's again and again and again approached me to enjoy with him, and he would lavish all kinds of things upon me. And I've just dismissed the person as a horrible, low-class person. But in this circumstance, I don't know what else to do. How can I serve Ramanujacarya if I don't have the means to serve him? So she very quickly went to the merchant's residence, or his shop, and said, you've been asking so many times, I've now made a decision. I'm going to accept your proposal because my Guru Maharaj has come to town, and I have just this one request. This evening I will come and satisfy all your desires, but you supply all the ingredients that I need to make a wonderful feast and wonderful reception. You thought, fantastic. I can send my messengers right away to get first-class vegetables and rice and milk and so many things. Whatever it is that you need, you just give me a list and I'll see that it's at your home right away. And he sent all the ingredients very quickly, and she prepared a wonderful feast and offered it to Ramanujacarya and his entourage. In the midst of Ramanujacarya honoring prasad that was offered by Lakshmi, Vardacharya came home and saw Ramanujacarya was in his home. How wonderful! But wait a minute, he's having a big feast, and how did this happen? He didn't say anything to Ramanujacarya, but he's pulled his wife to the side. Said, how did all this happen? Please explain. And she very shamefully said, this is what happened. I went to that merchant, you know, the fellow that's been petitioning me again and again, and I didn't know what else to do but to serve Ramanujacarya. I'm prepared to go to hell for his satisfaction and his pleasure. And immediately the husband was so happy, saying, to have a wife like you, how have I been blessed by the Supreme Lord? You're so qualified. Later, Ramanujacarya was asking the same question. You're very poor. How were you able to make this arrangement? They couldn't tell a lie to Ramanujacarya. They told the truth. And Ramanujacarya said, very well. here's some Mahaprasad. Vardacharya, you go with your wife this evening. She's made a promise to this man. She can fulfill her promise, but bring my Mahaprasad and bring it to him. You wait outside. Lakshmi came, dressed nicely, gave the Mahaprasad of Ramanujacarya, and she explained everything that had happened. And Ramanujacarya was very satisfied with all the ingredients that had been supplied by this man. Now I'm here to satisfy your desires. And as he was taking the Mahaprasad of Ramanujacarya, he became so purified just by contacting his Mahaprasadam that as he was eating, he transformed and broke down and began lamenting, what a sinful person I've been, meditating simply to enjoy your body, when the opportunity to serve a great personality like Ramanujacarya, I'm not thinking like that at all. Can you do me one kindness? Can you take me, instead of enjoying together this evening, take me to meet Ramanujacarya? So Vardacharya and Lakshmi took him to meet Ramanujacarya, and he surrendered at his feet. The power of Ramanujacarya to transform the hearts and the lives of people was just incredible. That very evening, the same very wealthy personality had invited all of his guests for Ramanujacarya to come to his home, and he never came to his home. And he didn't know what happened, because Ramanuja didn't send a message saying, I'm not coming to your home. You've offended my devotee. He just didn't come. So he was wondering, what happened? What happened? Maybe he fell into some difficulty. So he began searching and found out that he went instead to the home of Vardacharya. So Yagesh came to Ramanuja's home, to Vardacharya's home, and asked him, what happened? I had this gathering ready to receive you very nicely. And Ramanuja told him, because you've offended my devotees, I would not step up one foot, one toe into your home. You correct this mentality, you learn the principle of serving the Vaishnavas, maybe on the way back from Tirupati. You correct this, and I'll pay a visit to your home. How important was service to the Vaishnavas, not only in the books and the teachings of Ramanujacarya, but how he trained and interacted, and by his own personal example showed how to always be in the proper mood of serving the devotees of the Lord. Same as Lord Chaitanya's teaching, Gopi Bhartor Padakamalayur Dasa Dasanudas. In Lord Chaitanya's teachings and also in his own personal conduct.